I don't restrict myself too much in the beginning because I still don't know the story yet. I do like my stories to be character driven. Usually when I'm thinking of a book, it's certain scenes that come to me. Hey, I'm Lily. I'm working to publish my first novel and I'm currently starting my second book. The first time I started writing a book, I had no idea what I was doing, and I went through a lot of trial and error to figure out what worked for me and what didn't. Now that I've gotten to the fourth draft of my first book, I've realized a lot of things that could have made it more efficient and a smoother journey. I wanted to talk about the beginning stages of a book, and a lot of people call this draft zero or brainstorming stage. It's that very early brainstorming period where you're trying to figure out the story and the plot and the characters and everything, and you don't even have the first draft yet. As someone who's a natural pantser, it's really hard for me to plot. And I've tried plotting. I've tried sitting down and plotting out chapters, plotting out beats of a story, but it's really hard for me to plot something when I don't have any substance to work with. I discover a lot of my work through writing, but I tried sitting down and opening a random document and writing that way, but I still was hitting a lot of blocks. I've created this process for myself to really flesh out an idea before I even start writing or plotting the book. And I want to share it because I think it might be helpful for you if you find that pantsing and plotting are both kind of hard for you and you kind of need a mixture of that. The first thing I do is I fuel the inspiration. When I get an idea for a book, I immediately make a playlist on Spotify for that idea. And I start listening to music that feels intuitively drawn to that idea. And I'll listen to music and I'll kind of visualize potential scenes and potential conflicts and characters. And I will start adding songs that feel aligned with that story. And even just listening to songs and having that Spotify playlist really fuels my inspiration, and it helps me get guidance to where to go next in the direction. I also in this stage will do a Pinterest board, and Pinterest boards are really helpful because it keeps giving you different images that are similar to the ones that you're liking. I'll have an idea and I'll find one image that really matches that idea, and then it'll give me a ton of other images to go off of, and I'll intuitively look through the images and be like, does this image feel like it's connected to that story or does it not? And I really feel like in this beginning stage, I'm discovering the story. I'm not really creating it. So I'm trying to think of all these different methods that I can use to extract the story from my brain or from wherever it's coming from, and being able to really form it and make it into a story that is digestible to read. And I will listen to the playlist that I made and look at the Pinterest board at the same time. So I'll get a scene, like a download of a scene of two characters and a certain conflict going on, and then I kind of work off of that. Or I'll get a download of like an image of a character, and then I'll keep thinking like, well, what would this character do in this scenario? The second thing that I love to do is talk it out with people around me. I am very expressive and I feel like I process things best when I'm talking about it. So whenever I have an idea in my head, if I just think about it and ruminate on it, it's hard for me to really understand it fully. But I'll talk to close friends and people that are readers and kind of throw ideas out to them and see how they react, what they think about it. I will talk out different ideas and they'll kind of give me their perspective and feedback, and kind of in that exchange of conversation and that flow, I'll start to get more ideas and it'll start to feel more real. There's something about bouncing your ideas off of someone else that helps you find clarity in what you think. Some of my best ideas have come from when I'm talking to someone and we're like really deep into the conversation and we're asking questions and we're trying to figure out this plot or this plot hole or something. And all of a sudden it hits me, and it's usually when I'm talking to someone else about it, and then I'll immediately take notes on my phone. The next thing I'll do after that is research. For me, I write fantasy, so I really want to make sure that my fantasy has elements that make sense and kind of goes with the story. For example, if I'm writing about a certain group or mythology or a cultural element or magic system, I like to do research to see how other stories are using those elements. I want to make sure that a lot of my elements are fact checked and make sure they seem real to whatever inspiration it came from. The idea that I have involves pirates, and I don't know a lot about pirates in my day-to-day life, but I want to make sure I represent them well. So I would look up like history of pirates and pirate mythology and like the culture of pirates and what they normally wear, what they eat, like where they're found, like normal beliefs, normal behaviors. And I want to make sure that it feels real. And even in this stage, like the research stage, I will also look at popular media that's similar. I wanted to watch the Pirates of the Caribbean because I was interested in seeing how pirates show up in other media. I read To Kill a Kingdom, and it's a very similar concept to the book that I have. It involves pirates and sirens and a love story, so I wanted to see what was already out there, and this is also a good way of researching the market because you can kind of see where your idea fits, and then based off of what you're seeing in the market and what's popular and what people are connecting with, it helps you kind of understand what direction you want to go in your story and what people are going to like. Just immersing myself in this area of information to make sure that my story represents everything well and kind of fits with this niche. Stage 4, this is when I actually start thinking about my plot. And I know that plotting is important. As someone who is a discovery writer, it's really hard for me to plot. But now that I've gotten to the stage where I've kind of fleshed out a lot of the ideas, I kind of know the vibes and the scenes and the visualizations, I can start building the plot. I either start with character arcs or plot points, and usually they're pretty intertwined. I do use Save the Cat Writes a Novel because I know that's really helpful for the beat structure, but especially at this point, I try not to focus too closely on like plotting chapters or plotting very specific beats. I kind of just want to understand the main like catalyst, midpoint, climax, like stuff like that, the main markers, and then I can have freedom whenever I'm writing my draft. If you're like me, you probably get stuck plotting because you don't know the story enough to put it into a plot, and sometimes you feel like you're trying to force an idea into a plot when you don't really know what it is yet. At this stage, I really like to focus on the characters, at least the main characters. I like to write romance, especially with an FMC and an MMC, so I'll try to make sure that I can really understand those characters and really flesh them out fully and understand their dynamic along with the plot, because I don't need to plot out everything. I don't need to know all the side characters, all the side quests, all the details of the world, but I do like to know my characters pretty well before I go into the story. I'll use character profile templates to write out different ideas and kind of build these characters. I'll kind of put them in scenarios and kind of figure out like what they would do in that situation. I like to have a name for a character, and I also like to have a general visual because it helps me kind of visualize scenes and start writing when I do. The main conflict of my story is fleshed out because I know a lot of plot and character development is based on conflict. So at this point, I like to have a hook, a general outline, and a general knowing of my main characters and how they're going to change throughout the story and how that relationship is going to develop. Now that I have kind of a basic understanding of all of that, I don't go straight into drafting. Now I'm going to practice writing different scenes by using the characters and the story and the plot that I have right now. Open up a document on Scrivener or Word, and I will just start writing a scene that came to me. And usually through writing, I start to get different ideas as I'm going, because I do think I discover most of my ideas through writing itself. But I don't want to just start writing the whole story because I don't know enough yet. So I'll like jump around from different scenes. Like I'll have a scene of like a climax or a falling action or a catalyst or a fun and games or a big betrayal or something. And I like to kind of play with different ideas and write different scenes and kind of write until I feel stuck. And then I kind of go back to other stuff. But at this point, I like to write and play with different ideas and see how these characters move and act in this world, because you can have an idea of a character and you can make a character profile, but until you start writing about that character in the world, it's hard to understand exactly how your character is going to react and come onto the page. And it sounds kind of funny because you are creating your character, but I've had times in the past where I've had this idea of a character and then I start writing them and they're a lot different than I thought. And I realize that the story is going in a different direction, but that's actually better for that character. At this point, I'll play with POV and tense because I like to see what flows the best, or different writing styles or different voices to kind of see like what's working and what's not. Stage 6 is repeat until I feel like I know enough, where every time I get a block when I'm writing a scene and I'm trying to figure that out, I'll go back to listening to music and going to my Pinterest board and talking to people and doing research and reading other books and looking at my plot and switching stuff around, because all of these stages is a cycle. It's not linear, where I'll kind of jump around and do what I need at that moment to fuel my idea. I will repeat this until I get to a point where I feel confident enough that my story has enough substance where I can then start writing the first draft. I didn't do this my first time, and I ended up having to rewrite my story twice Honestly, 2.5 times because I did do a lot of rewrites for my third draft. So I want to kind of skip that stage of doing a full rewrite and just really dig into the story the first time in draft 0. So then I can, by the time I get to draft 1, I have more of a full draft and then I can speed up the editing process. It's going to look different for everyone, whether you're a natural pantser or a natural plotter, but I wanted to give you ideas to see how you could develop your idea for your story. I'm going to continue to make videos updating my process working on this second book. So I'm excited to show you kind of the trial and error chaos of me working on this book. So thank you for watching and happy writing.